Hi there, this is Daniel Martin from Fishwick and Associates. In today's episode, we're going to talk about scooter law. Take it away, John.
Thank you, Daniel, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. This is another Fishwick and Associates webisode. We have a full house today, lots of folks here. We've got a special guest, which we're going to get to in a moment, Carrol Ching, not a guest, a huge part of our firm, our senior associate, lots of brain power. We've been pulling lots of suggestion and pulling teeth to get her today. We're honored to have her today. She's got a lot of firepower when we're in cases with tough situations and the bases are loaded with the other side. We send Carrol in to shut the other side down, and more often than not, she, strikes them out and they're done. So we're glad to have her. I see our host with the most, Zach. I see Daniel, our associate, and I see Kerin Daly, our legal assistant. And so I'm going to start with you, Zach. We're talking today about personal injury cases, talking about quirky little vehicles you can ride, scooters that Daniel and Kerin ride. Blades, I understand Melinda has been on. I grew up on the farm, and as many of you know, I didn't have much, but we did make our own skateboards back in the day. We'd get wood at night with the candles and make them. And so I grew up with some of these things. Don't have a lot of personal injury cases with scooters, but we have with bicycles. We have with automobiles. Both you and Daniel kind of lead our personal injury section. But Zach, when we ask you to investigate personal injury cases, whether it's for a scooter or an automobile case, what are some of the things you do as relates to interviewing witnesses and those sorts of things?
Well, absolutely. One of the first things we do is we speak with the actual client themselves, and we get their side of the story. What exactly happened? What did they say to the police? What did they observe around them other than the accident? Then we reach out to law enforcement, and we obtain an accident report if one was filed. We also get the CAD report from the computer and any kind of calls. And then from that report, I look at it and I reach out if there was a witness either in the report or if the client/victim said there was one, I reach out to them and then I speak with them. And then I also go out to the actual site and the location, and I try to put myself in the position of where our client was, and I take pictures of the surrounding area. And then I take all that information, put it in a report for you.
All right, that's great, and that's comprehensive work, and that's what we do in all of our personal injury cases. And so Kerin Daly is a legal assistant with us. Kerin went to North Carroll School, and William & Mary, she was a very good student. And Kerin, you ride these scooters, but my question for you is there's a lot of paperwork associated with those. Before you get on those scooters, you're very careful in the work you do here, but my question to you is, are you looking through that agreement when you're out with your friends saying, hold on, I'm not riding this scooter, I'm not riding this until I've carefully read this document?
No, I have not.
You have not. So, but you've kind of brought all this to our attention, and you're kind of the production leader for us today. You do ride scooters, and you've got a brother who rides skateboards, right?
I do.
Yeah. All right. But we do, Kerin, have somebody who has read this. Talked to Carrol before, and with her children, she actually reads those documents that her kids bring home with her. And Carrol reads documents for us that often the lawyers on the other side haven't read. So Carrol, if I go to rent a scooter today, often they have a lot of stuff that I don't look at, but you've looked at. It's stuff that it's a lot of big lawyer words like indemnification and arbitration and those sorts of things. But what's it mean for the average person to go rent, say, a scooter or a bicycle? What's some of the standard stuff that's in there, and what's the legal effect of those things, Carrol?
Well, typically when you go to rent a scooter or participate in a lot of other recreational activities along those lines, you'll get something that may be called a release, a general release of liability, something like that. It can also have an indemnification agreement included within the release or perhaps even as a separate document. But the general rule in Virginia is that a release that you sign pre-injury, pre-participation in a particular recreational activity is not valid in Virginia, even if you have signed it, because that is considered void as against public policy in the state of Virginia.
That's interesting. So, but what about these things in there, Carol, that talk about you'll indemnify the other side? You know, a lot of times it says those things seem pretty overreaching to me, but they seem to be in the agreements. These companies, these big companies like to put that in there. What's the effect of that? Is that a little bit unsettled in the law right now?
It is actually, in Virginia in particular. These indemnification agreements, they'll include language saying that the participant will agree to indemnify the company. That's a big legal word, but basically what they're meaning is that if they incur a loss, even a loss based on their own negligence, that might cause your injury, the participant's injury, that the participant actually agrees to pay them back for any claims that they may have or any loss they pay. And sometimes that also includes the payment of the company's attorney's fees, which, as we know, can be very substantial in defending these types of cases. So that's where you have the play between this release language, but a lot of companies are now trying to add this indemnification language, which the area of law is unsettled. There's been at least one circuit court, in fact, here in our area in Roanoke County, that's held that kind of language is not valid because it's simply an attempt to get around that public policy argument as it goes to the release. But again, that's a circuit court case, and that area of the law is rather unsettled. And even in the area of releases, it's not a blanket statement that they're always void. There can be certain sort of property release can sometimes be valid. Also, an inherently dangerous activity, such as some kinds of racing, those releases can sometimes be valid. So it is actually important to go ahead and read that language that you get, even though it scrolls down for quite a ways.
Thank you, Carol, for that. We also have in the house today Judge Daniel. Daniel, sometimes a lot of these things say you got to arbitrate if you have some sort of a claim against these companies. You rent a device, you got to arbitrate it. Tell me about that, Daniel. Are those things enforceable? You know, we typically at Fishwick and Associates, we want to be in court. We like jury trials, we like judges, we like public court hearings. What's the daggone arbitration, Daniel, and are those things enforceable?
So an arbitration is essentially kind of like a private court process. Instead of submitting your claim to a public court, you're going to a private arbitrator who will, it's a process similar to a court proceeding, but it's with a private company essentially who will hear your claim and they'll hear, the other side's defense, and they'll make a decision for you. And generally under Virginia law and specifically under federal law, the Federal Arbitration Act, those kinds of agreements are valid, even if they're in these terms of use that you open up the app, you sign up and you say, I agree to the terms of use and I've read them, even though you probably haven't. Those are still enforceable under Virginia law and more importantly, federal law. And one important tidbit there is that often these arbitration agreements will include a waiver of class actions. So you can't pursue a class action arbitration. And those types of agreements have been upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States as well.
That's interesting, Daniel. So I guess for our viewers out there, I mean, the main work that we do in personal injury cases, automobile accident cases, or accidents where somebody falls at a store, those traditional types of things. We thought we'd have a little fun today talking about other vehicles or moving devices, talking about scooters, talking about bicycles, skateboards. But I think we want to give everybody a perspective that we handle these cases, that oftentimes there are these agreements. The devil is in the details.
Absolutely.
And we spend time on that and we look at the details. And obviously, Carol is an exceptional lawyer who looks at those details to make our arguments in court. So I appreciate everybody being on here today. Zach, what do we always say at the end? We want to get people to
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, as we always wrap it up, you know, like you said, the devil's in the details. And if you have any questions out there, feel free to give us a call at the firm. We'd be glad to, you know, answer your questions and help you in any way we can. And we ask that you like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any comments, please post them. We'll get back to you.